I'm Jay Horton. I make movies that make money. This is how. In 2012, my fourth movie, Monsters in the Woods, was released. Kind of, but we'll get into that. To help take us through the production and distribution of this nasty little monster movie, I've brought in executive producer Al Gomez. And stick around towards the end, and I'm going to give you some more business data on this movie and how it ultimately ended up making more money. So I am here with Al Gomez, and we're talking about Monsters in the Woods. How's it going, Al?
Good, been great.
How did you first get involved with the project?
A friend had read your script and said, "Hey, Jason, and you and I, we'd worked on a couple of things before, and I was very well aware of your work, but I hadn't seen nor had you said, hey, Al, I got a new script." And he says, "Hey, I just read his script, and it's really cool, and you got to read it. It sounds like a lot of fun, and you can probably do it for a real low budget." And he went on and on and on. And I said, "Well, that's cool." He said, "I wonder why I haven't heard from Jason about it." But yeah, I said, "Let me give him a call." And I called you, and I said, "Jason, I hear you got a monster script. You got some horror in that sense. It sounds like fun." And he told me about it. I thought, "Oh, cool." And I read it. He was absolutely right. It was a fun, scary little monster movie that I thought, that's something we could pull off fairly easily,
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's one of the better scripts I've written, but I talk a lot on this channel. I talk to people about, how they raise money for movies or how they get producers involved. And, there's no magic bullet answer for that. And, like
Yeah.
in our instance, in Monsters in the Woods, and you helped fund it. And we were friends for years. I mean, it was a relationship that had been developed for years. And
Right.
before it, from a filmmaking standpoint, before it paid off in any kind of, like we're developing a project together, it was almost like 6 years, 7 years,
At
something like that.
least. Yeah. At least.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'd been a while. Well, we had met when I was in Louisiana,
Right.
right around the Hurricane Katrina. And you were just out of college at the time, right? You were with other filmmakers, and
just
you
a
guys
few
were
years
making,
out.
I think you might have made your first one. You were working on your second film, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, let's stay in touch. You come to LA, or you're going to be out. Let's." And you said, "Sure." So I've had many people tell me that. So when you came out, I thought it was, "Oh, cool. Jason came out. He's out in LA." So yeah, it was several years since then.
Yeah, and there were a few projects in the interim, that I brought Trap to you at one point, and we just we couldn't really get it together on that one.
Right.
I Edges of Darkness, although you did help with the distribution end on that one.
Yeah.
Like as far as production on the movie, not so much. And then our paths were just we were working together, we were friendly, but we just Monsters in the Woods came together all those years after. I think we shot the movie in 2000 and I want to say 10, maybe 9.
And it was over the period of a year.
Yeah.
So it went, I think, from 2010 into 2011.
Right.
When we finally finished it up. In terms of shooting it, you spent a good 6 months?
Yeah, in post. Yeah. And
then we did pickups, and we did things after. We did some reshoots. Also.
Yeah, I mean, and I did reshoots all the way up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I did some gore inserts with Bravo for the director's cut. Yeah,
right.
Movies are never done.
No, and that's fine. I mean, Woody Allen, many people do that. They big budgeted movies. They'll reshoot half of it. So it happens all the time. In terms of the money, we had done other things. I had come into a little bit of money on an inheritance, and that's why the friend called and said, "Hey, if you want to put something into it," because I didn't have a lot, but it's like, well, what kind of production do I want to get involved with the money that I had? And so I was with everything, again, our relationship, the script. You actually had started pre-production and we're getting close to shooting.
Yes. If I remember right,
were you involved in the initial shoot? Like I did a shoot with different actors, and I shot the sex scene for the beginning.
No.
Okay, so yeah, I,
No.
I had actually started. That was the one thing. Again, I recommend this to indie filmmakers. You know, when you're looking there and you're trying to get a project going, whatever you have, whatever you can do, like start. Don't wait for the perfect circumstances. You know, I didn't have the perfect circumstances. I started shooting the movie, and you know, at a certain point, you were able to get involved, and we were able to do it better. So we did. You know, but I think a lot of it was me just taking the initiative to get started.
Yeah, I think a lot of it that helped this project big time. And that it's like you had in mind, you had the vision for. And one thing about what you do as an indie filmmaker is your experience was already, I can do this with this. I have these resources.
Yeah.
And know that what are the parameters under which, with the budget that I have, can I accomplish that? Because I don't think you just would have willy-nilly said, "Hey, I can go make a monster movie in the woods." You had a plan.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I did.
so when we actually talked about it, you did have a plan.
Yeah. I
And
mean, close to something approximating a plan.
No, I think you did. I mean, it wasn't. You didn't have an experienced AD. There was a certain amount of younger people you had that that were really wanted to help you do this, and so everybody was on board to do this, but their experience was limited. So
Yeah.
I don't think they were able to help you in that sense, knowing what could happen if we didn't have this, we ran across this. Everybody was enthusiastically approaching what they wanted to do, but sometimes not knowing what was coming their way, didn't know how to handle certain things.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think that brings up a good point too. Because I talk on here a lot about filmmakers and getting free help or very low paid positions, and I talk a lot about you get what you paid for. And in this example, we had a fairly large group of people when we first went up there. That were all working for nothing or next to nothing, and we got from them what we paid for, and we ended up, as crew wise, it was basically me, you, and the sound guy, special effects.
Yeah, it was difficult in the sense, again, they were young people. Some people wanted, and most do not volunteer. They come on without getting paid because they want the credit.
Right.
They've been a PA and they want to have a tech position.
Yeah, a second AD or whatever.
Yeah, and they have some experience. Otherwise they wouldn't try to do the job.
Right.
But that being said, when we were on set, I saw how difficult it was for you sometimes because they really didn't know protocols. They really didn't understand when the director's giving you certain things to do, or we're trying to schedule certain things. Some people were kind of like, yeah, okay, and they really didn't know how things worked.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to speak ill of anyone, but they were there to hang out and mess around. Nobody was really there to work, And granted, they weren't being paid for work, so how can you complain?
Well, I think it goes back to that again. There's a certain element of even if you were paying them $100 a day or something, there's an element of professionalism that I think you learn from being on professional sets, and
Right.
you go, oh, that's how that's done. And some people who do go work, it's hard work.
Yeah.
And again, we were up in the woods. You were up there. It was hot. There were bugs. I mean, it's even when you're getting paid a lot of money, it's a difficult situation.
We were hiking 15 minutes to set every morning. From the parking lot to where we were shooting was 10 to 15 minutes trek uphill into the woods with gear.
Equipment.
Yeah.
People lugging it with everybody. It didn't matter. Everybody, the actors, the director, everybody was lugging equipment, of course. We went 15 minutes to a base camp. And then,
and then another 5 minutes here or there, whatever direction.
Yeah. So, again, it's no more difficult. I mean, you've worked a lot of professional sets. That it can be a tough road to get to some locations. This was a location shoot. We weren't on any stages anywhere.
Mm-mm.
So, we went somewhere, we're up in the mountains. It's a trek. It's what it's going to be.
Yeah, and it's hard to overemphasize like how stripped down the actual working crew was. I mean, so we're on set. You have me operating a camera. For the first 2 days, we had a second camera operator and we had a sound guy, and then we had our special effects guy. And those were pretty much the only like four like key working people at any given time. We had help here and there, but for the most part, it was us. We're moving the camera, whatever lights we have, we're moving them, whatever gear we're moving them, we're setting the set. But actually the cast outnumbered the crew.
Yeah. And some of the casts were helpful. Some of them actually
totally.
had production experience. The expectations, a lot of them weren't sitting around going, where's my 4 makeup people? They knew what had to be done on a production like this. And I appreciated the efforts they put into on helping out.
Yeah, I pretty much every movie that I've like produced and directed that, like I've owned a piece of that I wasn't hired for. I've had really good experiences with cast, and not to pat myself on the back, but I think I'm good at casting, especially low budget movies. Because, you're not just looking for a good actor, you're also looking for a specific type of actor, because micro budget movie is a very specific type of shooting. You're getting, 1 to, possibly 3 takes, like tops,
Right.
So like the actors, they have to not only deliver, but deliver fast and then be able to move on and be able to change, like they're prepared to shoot this scene, but then, something happens and we absolutely have to keep shooting. We can't wait to shoot the other one. So they have to do another scene that they're not prepared for, stuff like that.
Correct. Talking about the crew experience goes back to the monster in and of itself. It was a learned experience, like, for all of us.
Oh yeah.
Right from the get-go, into what it is that you want and need when you have a theme for anything. We have monsters in the woods, we need monsters. And it was a bit of a surprise when we weren't able to accomplish that at first, because of the small crew and the person leading the crew to create the monsters. Mm-hmm. Not that it wasn't, again, going back to experience, not that the enthusiasm, the drive, the work wasn't there. It's just the experience wasn't there. And we found that out quickly, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that trickles down a little bit because, top down from, I consider myself as a director to be like the leader of the set. And, we were dealing at first with, a special effects crew that hadn't done a movie on this scale, like this level of monsters. And I still believe absolutely in my heart that he could have pulled it off. But like you said, it's kind of that lack of experience. We didn't do any makeup tests with it. We didn't actually, like, the monsters were being built for the first time on set. So there was no, there was no room for error. I mean, we basically, on that, I think it was the second day in Big Bear, we basically had to shut down. We didn't have the monsters to shoot. We weren't sure we were going to get back, and but we were able to, and we just, we commissioned a new team to create the monsters, and the original team stayed on and did the rest of the makeup effects.
We were able to recover actually fairly quickly, because you were able to find somebody you had worked with for an effects to create the monsters. What was his name?
Tom Devlin with 1313 Effects. He had done all the zombie effects in Edges of Darkness, and I had DP'd the first movie he ever produced, called Legend of the Sand Squatch. His girlfriend had directed it. I'm sorry, his wife now. And so I shot it, and we stayed friends, and we wanted to work together. And we didn't have the money to really pay his rate. But we paid him something, and they pretty much did it for materials and a little bit for the crew that came down and operated.
No, I was wonderfully surprised with the capability. I wasn't expecting it. I truly wasn't. I mean, he really came through, and I was concerned. It's like, what are we going to get? It's so fast. Yeah. Because I mean, who gets that?
Yeah, I mean,
Usually it takes months of planning to create the look and feel of something, and he did a terrific job.
yeah, in
You
like
know,
a week or something, I think you
yeah,
put those things together, you know.
yeah,
And on movies at this budget level, you just typically don't have full-bodied monsters. You just
no,
don't. Which granted, you know, the whole the problems we had, again, you know, I talk about, you know, stuff trickling top down. You know, I had the hubris to think that I can direct and I can do the AD stuff. Like, I'm going to bring my friend in here and I'm going to call him an AD, but he's not really doing the AD job. He's just there to kind of support me, but I'm going to do it because I'm awesome. I can do everything. And the same thing with the monsters, you know. Like I said, I know that the original artist had the ability to do it, but I
yeah,
put him into a position where he couldn't succeed. You know,
right,
I put us in a position to where it had to be done on the day, where we didn't have the extra time and money to test it. I mean, I could have and should have made those calls. Now, granted, you know, an experienced effects artist at that point, the same guy, if he were to do this movie today and I would tell him to do that in that way, he would say, no, it can't be done.
right,
And he would be
right,
right. But, you know, at that time, he was new. He didn't know he didn't know how to stick
correct,
up for himself and say no,
right.
which, and he was also doing a good chunk of the catering at the time too.
Yeah, yeah. No. When you think about back then, the whole, and that's one thing to pass on to new filmmakers, people doing their first and second projects.
Yeah.
It truly comes down to as much enthusiasm as you can have about, I can do this. I can do this. That's great. You need that. You need that whole feeling of, I can do this. Otherwise, you know, why get involved in filmmaking? Planning it out, how it's going to come about, when you need it, why you need it. You know, there's a lot of questions to answer, but it's so important, even on your first film.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to succeed and feel like you're going to get what you want out of filmmaking, plan it out. There's no rush for it. What's the rush, right?
Yeah.
It's a matter of, if you see something and you want to make it happen, plan it out. And I don't care how inexperienced you are, because there's some wonderful examples of filmmakers from all over the country who said, yeah, you know, I took 6 months to plan a shot, or 6 months. And you go, okay, well, you know, they made it work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on Netflix, you know, and then it's their first film, right?
Right.
And so I go, yeah, you know, you were smart to do that. I don't know if it taken 6 months, but they had a learning curve. Some people have a fast learning curve. Some people have a slow learning curve. More than anything, it's like, at least learn something about what it is that you want to do, and then plan it out. And that was a big one for us, because once we started doing that, I think it freed you up as a director. And as you started going, wow, I can do this. You know, I'm not worried. Al will help do this. He'll take care of that. You know, he'll take care of that. And in the back of your mind, while that's still on your mind, you weren't worried about it anymore. You know, I can go do that, because that will be taken care of. And then I got help, you know, on the support staff. Mm-hmm. You go take care of that. You'd help them take care of catering. You do that. So the planning started coming about. So all that pressure was off of you and what you needed to do as a director. It was important.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. By the time we got to the second shoot in Big Bear, you know, which initially was never supposed to happen, but once we got to that point, like the rest of the shoot was pretty much, at least from my perspective, like it was just creative at that point. Like, you know, the crew was stripped down. We didn't have any more of, you know, the faux crew there. It was the people that were there working, and there were very few of us. And but it was like boom, boom, boom. And we were able to complete like, you know, a good chunk of the movie, almost the entire second act, in those like 2 days.
Yeah. But it went down to, in a weird way, that first trip to Big Bear was almost like a rehearsal.
Yeah.
In a weird way, because it allowed you, as much as what was going on and all the things that we were trying to overcome, the difficulties trying to overcome, you were probably seeing things.
Yeah.
You know, well, that's not going to happen today, that this isn't going to work. That's okay. Well, then if we come back, and we didn't know at the time where were we going to go. I mean, it was a difficult time
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, we didn't know we were coming back. I mean,
yeah,
there was a short period of time between that first shoot and the second shoot. We were like, well, maybe that's it. Maybe we have to
yeah,
shut down. I mean, I
I,
remember
I,
having
I
that
agree.
conversation.
Yeah, there are obviously many productions over the decades where they go, hey, this isn't working. Be it because of an actor, somebody died, lost locations, something,
Right.
and that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars went into something, and they go, no, this isn't working.
When you
The
say
first
that, I
ones to
always
go,
think about Eric Stoltz and Back to the Future. You know how they
yeah,
shot like 3/4 of the
yeah,
movie with him before they swapped him out for Michael J. Fox.
yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, but there are stories of Jaws.
Yeah, the
Many times
shark.
they were going to shut Jaws down because this things didn't work. You'll hear these horror stories on these documentaries about certain movies that were made where they were going to the studios are going to go, no, this is nuts. Francis Ford Coppola's Godfather, they were going to stop. There's so many movies that on and on where people go, they were going to stop production.
Yeah. And I mean, and the difference between a lot of those and something like this is that there is, like there's some studio backing, there's some money there. When you have a micro budget film like this, a setback like that it can totally just, that's it. Movie's done.
Right.
There's no wiggle room. I mean, we got lucky, but going back, looking at it in retrospect, had I just planned a little bit better, from the get,
it would have worked out differently. I'm not so sure it would have been any better because
That's true. Who knows?
I think it allowed you to go through that, and some filmmakers have to go through that to go, I can make this better.
Yeah.
And even when you did the director's cut, you go, I can make this better.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I sat on them. It took me, I think 6 or 7 months the first time to do that first edit. And I just, because of the issues we had, in the original script, all the behind the scenes stuff was supposed to take place in the first 10 to 15 minutes. I think it was like 12 pages of the script.
Right.
So the second act, which was more stayed, was, regularly shot. But because of that setback, even coming back, we didn't really have the time to shoot the second act how it was initially intended. So
Correct.
I basically had in post, I had to extend that first act to almost 25 minutes. And that's one thing we did, like when we had the monster mess up, we still shot the rest of the day, but we shot all of these scenes and little sequences that weren't initially in the movie that would go in the front end. But the way it affected the final product is, it made the structure a little lopsided to where I had this, 25-minute first act and then about a 20-minute second act and a really short third act. It took me 6 months going back and forth trying to figure that out and make that kind of lopsided structure work. And I mean, and honestly, in the original cut, I don't think I ever quite licked it, and then, the movie came out and I was happy with it, but then a few years later, when I got the rights back from the distributor and had a chance to do a director's cut, just that time away, I was looking at it and I was like, oh, I could intercut these things. Like it doesn't have to be, non-linear.
So linear. Yeah.
Right, so, and I, that time apart from it allowed me to like see the board as a whole and, do a brand new thing. And fans have been, about 50-50 on what cut they like better. I personally much prefer the director's cut, but I've had feedback from quite a few people that like the original, which is actually why right now I'm working on a double Blu-ray that has both cuts of the movie. Gonna try to put it out around the first of the year.
Like with anything else, again, these, when you watch these things, how they came about, and it could be years later, they talk about it 25 years later.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We were fighting on the set. We were this, nobody knows. We're all human beings. And you think, wow, I wish I had $3 million or $10 million to make this movie. It would have been so much easier and I could have done this and that. I think that it gets down to the creator, your vision. With more money, you could create certain effects, sound effects, visual effects. Independent filmmaking, many times, not to get off subject here, but when you work for a studio, you're working for a studio, you're working for people who've made movies for many years. And if you're a first or second time filmmaker working for a studio, they're pretty much going to tell you how to make that movie. And, you know, there's a lot of money involved. In this sense, this is yours. You know, this is something where we went back and forth. I mean, there are things we changed. There are things that, but for the most part, you know, it's what you wanted to do.
For better or for worse, 9 times out of 10 on a micro budget feature, you get the movie that you made. You know, there's no interference. There's no, you know, like, you know, we had creative disagreements here and there, but at the end of the day, both you and the other producer on there gave me a lot of leeway. They're like, okay, it's your movie, do what you want. But respectfully, you know, we had, you know, arguments here and there about it. But
of course.
Still at the end of the day, you know, creatively, it's the movie I made.
I mean, I worked on, just to give an example, I worked on The Breakfast Club.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in post, and I was able to see, I think it was John Hughes' second movie,
mm-hmm.
I think. And he was in the midst of shooting Weird Science at Universal. And the people who actually put it, he shot it. He shot like 3 or 4 hours of a rough cut. I mean, it was long.
Right.
But the people who put it together, Dee Dee Allen is an amazing editor. I watched her almost daily. I would go into the editing bay and watch them take it from that 3.5 hour rough cut. If you can imagine The Breakfast Club at 3.5 hours. I mean, it was like, that doesn't make any sense. But they brought it down to what it was, the rhythm, the whole thing. John wasn't in the editing bay. He was shooting Weird Science, actually on the same lot, but he would come and see what they're doing, give some notes, but he wasn't there with them. And then the producer was Ned Tannen, who was the former president of production at Universal Studios. I mean, he was the president of the studio, basically. He had this very powerful producer, this editor who was the editor for Warren Beatty on Reds. So he had these people who were very powerful people, and they basically, you know, made that movie for him. He fought with them all the time. He literally, you hear his stories, he goes, I hate Hollywood because I can't make the movie that I want to make. So you start to wonder, if John were an independent filmmaker, what would he have done with The Breakfast Club versus what the studio made him do and what came out as The Breakfast Club? You know?
That's a really good point. I say this all the time to people when I'm talking about Michael Bay. Right. So like Michael Bay started out, his first movie was the Bad Boys. And then he did The Rock and I think Armageddon, I think. But anyway, Bad Boys and The Rock, to my way of thinking, in my opinion, are his 2 best movies. They were really good. Right. But he wasn't Michael Bay yet. You know, like there was still, the studio was still kind of pulling the strings, you know, they were Bruckheimer productions, you know, like it wasn't until he got later into his career where he just had total free reign that his movies started becoming, in my opinion, don't fight me down, trolls, that his movies became bad, you know, because like he
comparison.
He no longer had that. You know, he had nobody to answer to. So in some cases, having somebody to answer to is a good thing.
And I think that's why some filmmakers keep their producer partners.
Mm-hmm. Like Ron Howard.
Ron Howard, say with Brian Grazer for 30, 35 years. You know, there are other examples, but there are people who do work well together. They have this thing now creatively but also from a production standpoint, on everybody's meeting their needs. This is your job, this is my job, and they work well together doing that. And they trust each other doing those things because then everybody's needs are met for the most part, you know. So, and that goes true for, and you've done this, it goes true for working with talent, for working with actors. You brought up cast. You've worked more than once with people on your casts. On various movies that you've done that you like, you've brought them back, and many directors do that. Once you find people who you trust to work with, you like working with them again.
Well, yeah, and on I mentioned it slightly before, but on independent productions, on really small productions, the type of actor is so important, and that's something that you can't really get from an audition. So when you work on a micro budget and you meet one of those actors that are just perfect for those micro budget productions, I mean, hell yeah, you try to fit them in wherever you can, because there's so many variables, especially with those small productions. I mean,
Right.
I directed a movie, which I won't name. It was a larger budget movie, and I had a bunch of
Uh-huh.
name talent. And one of these name actors, she was, I mean, she's been in probably 150 movies and television shows.
Yeah.
Excellent actress, excellent.
Right.
And she broke down in the middle of I think it was the first day of shooting, because she wasn't getting enough takes. Like, she was like, I can't work like this. And, I ended up talking her down, and we worked through it, and she gave a really good performance in the movie.
Yeah.
But, it cost us some time. And, in casting, you have to look for the people that can not only deliver the performance you need, but that can handle the stresses that come with a micro budget production, which are very unique to that
Yeah,
budget level.
that's a lot of people don't realize that when they work on. I mean, I worked on various low budget things, but I worked on some big, as we discussed, some big budget things, and it is, you can see that money, when money's being tossed around and everybody's getting paid well, and then when you're not, they just don't have it. You really need to love what you do,
Right.
because you're going to go through the same stresses. And many times, when you get an actor who works on big budget productions who are given 10 takes, 20 takes, 30 takes, because either the director requires it, or they're working with other actors who do that, and it's just a habit. They do that all the time, and you can't do that on low budget and micro budget. You just can't. It's impossible, especially when there was film.
Mm-hmm.
When you're making a low budget film, there's only so much film stock that you had, and this is how much you're going to shoot per day, or you're going to run out of money to shoot your film. It's not so much with digital productions, but still, time is money.
Yeah.
And you can't, even though digitally, if you wanted to, you can shoot all day, one scene. But if you're trying to shoot a movie in 2 days, a lot of actors don't understand that. How do you shoot a movie in 2 days? I can't do that, And you're like, well, we do, and here's the time frame we have.
Well, I think that about wraps up Monsters in the Woods. Did you have any final thoughts on it, or?
Well, like I've told you before, I really enjoyed the experience. It was quite a learning experience. As I've always enjoyed working with you, and I thought, for what we had and what we went through, I thought we got a lot out of it. I was beyond it was beyond my expectations.
Right.
It truly was, and it showed me that your craft, if given the opportunity, your craft at the time, you were really coming into what you wanted to do. And like with anything else, like with any other producer, I said, I wish I had more money. I wish I'd bought us more time. I wish I'd given you a bigger crew or more experience. I wish. That was on me.
Right.
And it's like, that's why I said, well, let me give you what I can give you, as one person. And I thought we got a lot out of it, and I really had a good time through all of the things we went through. It was an experience, and I talk about it with family and people all the time about how this thing, I'm very proud of it, actually.
Yeah, me too.
It was other things I've worked on. In comparison, it's actually on the top of the list. It goes up there.
I've done some bigger and slicker looking movies since, but it's still, I would say it's probably in my top 3.
You did a damn good job with it. Is there anything else that you had in mind, or in terms of the movie? Is there anything that you would have felt you would have done differently with it at all?
I mean, retrospect's always 2020. In retrospect, I wish I would have had more money for equipment in that second act, so that I could have visually separated the first and second act more. Like, the initial conception was first act as the behind the scenes crew, you know, shaky cam behind the scenes, found footage, and then it was gonna, you know, switch
Yeah.
over to a regular movie style at the massacre
Right.
point. And
Right.
you know, but because of the budget level and the way we're shooting, and a lot of it was handheld anyway, there's not a lot of difference between the, you know, found footage stuff and the regular stuff. You know, it's just the cutting style changed a little bit, but I would have liked to have separated that more. I would have had to like more dolly movements, more push-ins. I would have liked to have worked
Yeah.
on some of the suspense moments a little bit more. You know, I think it works as kind of a, you know, like a low budget, like action comedy, but I don't you know,
Yeah.
I wanted some of those horror moments to land a little more genuinely. And,
Right.
you know, under the, you know, restrictions, it just, you know, couldn't quite get that to where it
I
was.
hear you. Yeah. I understand. Next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next monster movie, you know. Well, thanks for having me, Jason, and good luck with the Blu-ray on it. I'm looking forward to see how that turns out. And
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'll probably put this on there.
cool. And
Yeah.
anything else, if you need anything, just let me know.
So, the initial distribution on Monsters in the Woods was, well, kind of a bust for the producers. I know. Looking back over my first 4 films, it's amazing that I kept going at the time. But in those days, just having a movie get out, just having a movie like on the DVD shelves, that was a big deal. I mean, people, especially in the business, were still super impressed when you could get a movie at this budget level out in kind of a major way. And even though Monsters in the Woods wasn't a big moneymaker, the movie did lead me into the next phase of my career. Monsters in the Woods was initially released by Osiris Entertainment, and there weren't any shady dealings afoot or anything like that. At the end of the day, they just really did not know how to sell this particular movie. And well, they didn't. Aside from a modest regional DVD release through Family Video and online DVD through Amazon, it was pretty much not available anywhere else. After another 3 years of them basically just setting on the movie, I fought for the rights back, and I eventually got them. So I recut a director's cut version of the movie, even going as far as to shoot some new additional gore scenes with effects guy Robert Bravo. I put the movie back out through Amazon Prime Video Direct, and it started earning almost immediately. We ended up making more off those initial few months in self-distribution than we did in an entire 3 years of traditional distribution. I mean, Trap might have been the movie that made me realize that self-distribution might be viable, but Monsters in the Woods was the movie that really cemented it for me. If this 5-year-old little monster movie could earn decent money through self-distribution, what could a newer one do? Now, it would take me a few more years to find out, because right after Monsters in the Woods, I started getting brought onto a long string of hired gun directing gigs that pretty much took over my career for the next few years. I'll be talking more about that time period very soon. And as far as Monsters in the Woods, it's not done yet. I'm having a brand new deluxe Blu-ray prepared that features both cuts of the movie, the original cut and the director's cut, both with commentaries, a bunch of behind the scenes, and a few extra surprises. We should have that out by Christmas 2020. And Monsters in the Woods was also recently released on Tubi TV. You can see it free there. But whatever you do, keep making movies.